Thank you everyone for being here. Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome. Thank you so much. We have a very healthy number of participants here. I'm very happy to see you all. Today, we're going to be talking about rethinking well-being as a cornerstone of English language teaching. And I have a very long name, as my students tell me. I live in Poland, and my students tell me I have a very long name, so you can always just pick one. That's what I tell my students. Most of them call me Luis or Javier. Your choice is fine. All right. I'm very passionate about this topic of teacher well-being because, of course, I'm a teacher, and I've taught for that's when you know it's a long time. I had to pause. I think 16, 17 years now. And I've been teaching, 16, 17 years now. And I've taught at every grade level, kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. I started with adult education, which means outside of the university, adult learners, migrants in the community, and I was also, for a little bit, I was teaching in senior homes, for retirement homes, that would call it in some parts of the US. But also, of course, I teach at the university level. So I've taught every grade level. And the topic of well-being has become, throughout the years, more evident for me as a teacher, but also as a researcher. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. And I'm very glad to talk to you about it today. A little bit about me. My doggies have nothing to do with teaching, but all to do with well-being. So I just bring pictures of them everywhere I go because I love them very much. This is Maui on the left and Virgo on the right. Just a quick introduction to my babies. All right, so I love to start with stories. So let me share a story with you. I remember the first year, and you can see here is a couch. The first year of my teaching journey, I remember, I was ready. I got all the preparation I needed. I was 21. I was ready. I had all the theoretical knowledge that you needed. I knew how to plan classes, instructional design, this, that. I was ready. And then I went into the classroom. And the reality that I experienced in the classroom was very different, vastly different from the reality. Of course, teacher preparation, that we're talking about, how to prepare classes, lesson planning, that was helpful. But the social and emotional aspect of teaching itself, we had talked nothing about it in teacher preparation programs. And that for me was the most difficult element of teaching, especially during my first year. And I share a picture of a couch with you because for most of the first year of teaching, I remember just arriving at the doorsteps of my house, dropping everything, because I always had 3-4 backpacks, or, I was always carrying things, as we do, teachers. Just dropping everything by the entrance and just going into the couch and just crying, like I cannot do this anymore. That was my first year. And I think many teachers, especially novice teachers, go through this. And this is something that we don't talk about in teacher preparation programs. Do any of you, and I'm reading the chat, so please feel free. It's a conversation, so let's chat, okay? Do any of you connect to this? Have you had similar experiences, or do you know, especially new teachers who have had similar experience to this, especially during the first couple of years? This is one of the reasons why and I don't know if you've heard about this, but the first 5 years of teaching are the most crucial years of teaching. And we have here some of us totally, some of us not really. So we're somewhere teacher training years. We have different experiences. So that's fantastic. Good. The first 5 years of teaching are really the crucial part of our teaching. I had a teacher mentor. After 2-3 years, I met someone and she became my mentor. And she said, Luis, if you survive the first 5 years of teaching, you will be a teacher for life. So I guess I did survive, and I'm here teaching, So think about this. Why are you telling us these stories, Luis? Okay, so I think that, and this is how I'm approaching our conversation today. I believe that teaching and learning are social and emotional processes. Of course, they're cognitive as well, teaching and learning. And in teacher preparation programs, all we do is talk about the cognitive process of teaching and learning. And that's fantastic because I do see them as kind of like a triangle, right? A three-step process. It's all interconnected. But we rarely talk about the social and emotional processes connected to teaching and to learning as well. But we're focusing on teachers today, okay? But also as teachers, I feel that our journeys, our stories, if we allow it, they influence who we become, our pedagogy, our teaching. But also they remind us, why we chose to become educators. And this is an important point that I want to highlight here. And this is just part of my kind of perhaps my life mantra. I always go back to the question, why? And I would love to begin with a reflection. Why do you become a teacher? What is your why? And that's a question that I always ask myself as a professional, but also as a person, right? Like, what is my why for doing this? So I would love to hear from you. Why do you become a teacher? So let me give you a few seconds here. What is your why for becoming a teacher? I'm going to stop myself here for a moment just to see some comments and some thoughts. I see many of us are typing, so that's wonderful. I always wanted to work with children. Sorry, I need my eyes. I have them here. I just want to clean them up very quickly. I've always wanted to work with children. I wanted to do better than my teachers. Oh, Stephanie, yes. I heard this once. Stephanie, you reminded me of this. Someone said to me once, or so I heard someone, this assistant principal that I had in high school when I was teaching high school. And she started the year with this quote. And I don't know where she heard it or if she just came up with it, but she said, for all all of you teachers, I want you to be this year the teacher that you wish you were when you were a student, that when you were the age of your students, something like that. I'm paraphrasing here, but please try to be the teacher that you wish you had when you were the age of your students, something like that. And I thought that was fantastic. Araceli, money, yes, we all, we became teachers for money, of course. Araceli, wonderful to see you. Yes, yes. Money, yes. I've never heard of a teacher say we became teachers to become millionaires. Passing on my gain knowledge, yes, of course, and working as a nurse. Caroline, so service element, wonderful. Okay, I can see better now. Yes, your passion for your career, your foreign languages, yes, wonderful. Sharing knowledge. Okay, so we can see here some elements. So passion for what you do, the knowledge, teaching, etc., and passion for working with others or for making the life of others better, right? So at the end of the day, when we think about our pedagogy, that's very much connected to who we are. I did not see, so it's a passion that we have. It's a social, it's an emotional aspect of our career as well, right? So there's social aspects, emotional aspects. I did not see anyone right here because I love teaching the verb to be, or because I love, third person conjugations. This is cognitive, when we think of cognitive aspects of teaching, right? So grammar, of course, I'm not saying that it's not important, but I'm saying teaching, pedagogy is deeply connected to who we are as human beings from a social, from an emotional perspective, okay? And sometimes we ignore that. But that's how, well-being comes to play here in our conversation. By the way, this is the book that Bridget was mentioning, and a lot of our conversations today come from it, okay? We particularly have a chapter on teacher well-being, Anna and I, and this is the book, Activities for Social Emotional Learning, Developing Social Emotional Competencies in the ELT Classroom, okay? Um, Monica, you do have a passion for grammar. Yes, there's some of us. Yes, yes, I know. No, we're the good people. Yes, yes, good. So, well-being and advocacy. This is our conversation today. Why advocacy for language teachers and how to advocate for language teachers' well-being and success. Okay, so I'll be going through our conversation today. I'm not going to separate it into these three sections or elements. It's just gonna go continuously and we're gonna be delving into these elements throughout. Okay. So, what is wellness? And I'm going to try to interact with you as much as possible because I love conversations. What do you think? What is wellness? When you think of wellness, well-being, sometimes we use it interchangeably. What is wellness? What is well-being when you think of that? What is, a definition of well-being or wellness? Any ideas that come to mind when you think of wellness or well-being? And I have some questions here that you can consider. What conditions are necessary to be well, or for wellness to take place? How or in what ways does wellness manifest itself, and who contributes to or is responsible for wellness? I'm glad for you to answer all of them or some of them. Up to you. Okay. Rested, thank you for this. Yes. Being happy, Christian, thank you. Lucia, feeling rested, comfortable, safe. Yes, Ingrid, yes. No fear to speak, like chatting with a friend, be relaxed. Yes. Balance, Caroline, yes, balance. See, wellness connected to good emotions or emotions that make you feel good somehow, right? At home, yes, comfortable, exactly. Understanding for each other. So safety, right? Relax, confident, fantastic, fantastic. Ample time for recuperation. That's very important. Yes. Fantastic. Thank you all very much. That's wonderful. All right. So there are many definitions and all of you can continue writing here and I'm going to be going back and forth. Okay. So there are many definitions. Having flow experiences. Oh, I love that. All right. So we have different definitions. APA, American Psychological Association, they state that, or they define well-being as a state of happiness and contentment with low levels of distress, overall good physical and mental health outlook. So physical, mental are important for wellness usually, or a good quality of life. However we interpret that, right? A few years back, it's going to be 3 years soon, a couple of colleagues and I, we edited this volume where we talked about teacher well-being. And then we defined it based on the information that we got from all the contributors. We defined it as equilibrium. Many of you said balance here, where individuals experience health, happiness, and prosperity. Okay, these three elements. That's what we saw in the contributions. All of which leads to developing life satisfaction, self-realization, so the opportunity to grow as a person, but also professional as well, right? And the ability to engage in socially responsible behaviors. That includes many elements, okay? It could be personally, professionally, emotionally, spiritually, that produce long-lasting positive effects. It's kind of a long definition, but, so look at all the elements that, when we think of well-being. Here's something that I want you to take away more than anything from this definition. Well-being never looks the same for all of us. Look at our responses, look at the definitions here. What will be something that looks like well-being for me doesn't necessarily have to be well-being for somebody else. So what I'm trying to say is well-being cannot be prescribed because it's going to be very different for me than for you, okay? So how do you think well-being is different from teacher well-being? How are those two different? Is there a difference between well-being and teacher well-being? Let's see. Can we think about teacher well-being as the same thing that we just talked about, like well-being? It could focus more on the professional aspect. Lena, thank you so much. because even if I'm, yes, Monica, yes, yes. All right, so we have a few. Here's where I want to get to. Many times I had a principal once. Principal is a school director in the U.S. We call it principal, and he used to say, because teachers, we were burned out in that school. We were really burned out, and then he would always say, "Suck it up." He would say it like this: "Suck it up. You're the adults in the room. You have to be a professional." And there was this idea that professionals and well-being do not go together. And I hope that in this conversation, good question, Perdita. Thank you for that. I hope in this conversation, we would redefine what well-being looks like. If you're a professional, regardless, you're also a human being. So well-being and teacher well-being should be exactly the same thing. Teaching should not be a career, a vocation, a profession of sacrifice. It should be a profession of helping us thrive as humans, as professionals, because the better that we are and the better positions that we are, then the better we are to help our students. This idea of you cannot pour from an empty vessel, we have to be well in order for us to help our students, okay? So if anything, please, I would love for you to think about that, okay? Teacher well-being is and should be well-being in general, okay? When we think of well-being, there are different elements. And by the way, there is a typo there. It says Stanford, but it's a Stanford. So we're going to fix it before you get it. You're going to receive the PDF, okay? I'll fix that. But I really, really like the wellness wheel. I don't know if you've seen this before, everyone. There are different elements to well-being. In Stanford University, they have 8. There are many more, but I really, really like this. I've seen other frameworks and concepts when it comes to well-being, but this is the one that I probably like the most. And Stanford University, you can go to the website, you'll see it there. They say that wellness has different branches like social, physical, environmental. We don't talk enough about it, the environment. And to be honest, when I moved to Poland, here we have a lot of forests. I live right next to a forest. All I see is forest in my windows. And I can tell you that at least my mental well-being has improved significantly from the US, because in the US, nature was not, at least where I lived, was not as present, right? Financial wellness, intellectual. So at any given time, we will be prioritizing one and or maybe 2 aspects of well-being. It's very hard to prioritize all 8 at the same time, but as individuals, as human beings, as professionals, at some point in our lives, and it's going to change, you could think about and you can explore, reflect on which of these you're prioritizing and why, right? And then that would help us understand, okay, so this is what I need to focus on because this is what I'm prioritizing, but perhaps I'm not taking steps to do that, right? So maybe I need to take the steps. If physical wellness is what you're prioritizing, then what does that look like for you, okay? For me, for example, I love running, so physical wellness is very important for me because it helps me with my mental well-being as well, right? So I go running a lot, right? But that doesn't work for everyone. So again, this idea of well-being is not prescribed. And I keep saying this because during COVID, and that's when I left, that was my last year of teaching in K through 12 in the United States, because they started having conversations about teacher self-care and well-being in the US. And what they would do is that they would start conversations, meetings with teachers. They would say, okay, let's breathe in. And we would do mindfulness activities, which I love. It's wonderful. Breathing in, breathing out, remember if you feel stressed, 5 things that you see, 4 things that you hear, these are grounding activities. And they would they would prescribe you some activities so you could feel better, supposedly, right? But then they would give you a lot more work because, of course, we were transitioning online and there was more work. And then we would say, this is too much, we're burned out, we need help. And they're like, oh, we already gave you some tips on how to take care of yourself. Remember to walk for 10 minutes. No, it doesn't work for everyone. Okay, so again, well-being cannot be prescribed. This is a process of reflection. What works for me? Okay. How does well-being traditionally look like? And this is in my experience with the teachers that I've worked with, and I'm working, and I'm very grateful that I have so many colleagues around the world. And when we talk about teacher well-being, traditionally, the teacher is at the center and is responsible for the well-being of the entire school or educational system. As teachers, we know that we are responsible for student well-being. That's one. For academic well-being, meaning like teaching, for some of us, we had to, like in class number 5, you have to cover this. Class number 6, you have to cover this. And you have to check. You know, you have to go and check, making sure that you went over everything. Societal well-being, because again, we're teachers. School well-being, making sure that the school is, you know, accomplishing what it needs to accomplish. Administrator well-being, because the administrators receive orders for higher ups, and then they say, okay, teachers, you have to do this, you know. And then school district well-being, which is the, I guess in some countries they will call it something different, like the county, the district, you know, like a wider school network well-being, because again, we're in charge of instruction and making sure that everything is accomplished, right? So there is a lot of pressure on teachers from all sides. I should have put here also, well, it's part of societal well-being. It includes parents as well, right? But in this book that I share here on the left-hand side, Janine, a friend and colleague of mine, and I, we talked about the importance of what we call responsible well-being. Because yes, we're teachers and we have so much going on. We shouldn't be responsible for the entire, literally we are carrying, for many of us, in many of our contexts, we're carrying our entire ecosystem, you know. And if teachers, and we're seeing this in some places like in Texas, for example, where Texas, US, where if they don't have enough teachers, the entire ecosystem crumbles down. Some school districts in Texas are only teaching now 4 days a week because they don't have enough teachers, or the classes have become shorter because they don't have enough teachers. They have teacher shortage, right? Because many teachers are leaving or they're moving somewhere else because they're overworked, they're burned out. So Janine and I talked about the importance of creating a responsible well-being ecosystem where individuals, we call it responsible well-being, where individuals and society at large is responsible for the ecology of educational well-being, okay? So teachers are part of it. So society and individuals, including parents, should be responsible for teacher well-being as well, right? This is something that we have to keep in mind. So, but Luis, you know, and I understand that perhaps for some of us, this might be a new concept. And because when we talk about well-being, often we talk about student well-being, and that's perfectly fine. But why focus on teachers, Luis? You know, well, that might be a good question. And please, at any time, everyone continue writing here because I do see your comments, okay? Teachers, and this, Sarah Mercer said this better, but she said, teachers are the lifeblood of our educational system. And I truly believe in that. Yes, students are perhaps, when we think of it, the educational system, they're the individuals we serve. Schools are there for students, but schools wouldn't be there if teachers were not there, right? So I do think that teachers, we are part of the lifeblood of our educational system. Without teachers, there is no schools, okay? Also, we have seen more and more that there is, and we're going to talk about stress, post-traumatic stress and trauma. I'm going to end with that at the end of our conversation a little bit, but we're seeing more and more, and perhaps you're experiencing this in your roles and in your schools, your districts, that teachers are experiencing a much higher level of burnout, of compassion fatigue, of stress, many things happening to teachers nowadays that perhaps before it was less or it was not as visible, but we're seeing it more and more. And that's leading to school teacher attrition, teachers leaving the profession. A lot of countries and states are having difficulties with teacher retention because teachers are leaving the profession. Okay. Also, we have to keep in mind that we're part of the educational community. If we suffer, the quality of our instruction, we're professionals, but we're human beings, and we can only perform to the best of our abilities, right? If we are stressed, if we are burned out, if we are overworked, we will do the best that we can with what we have. That's just the reality, right? Also, when we think of motivation, and this is in the US, but also around the world, teacher motivation to stay in the profession is very, very much drastically going down. I remember I was teaching in a high school in the US, and we had a teacher preparation program in high school. They started in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. They started taking classes to eventually go into the university and become teachers, but they were taking like teaching classes, education, principles of education and things like that. They were a specialized school. And I remember talking to those students in 11th and 12th grade that were about to graduate. It's like, oh, so are you ready to become a teacher? And they're like, no, I'm just going to get my degree and work on something else. I'm like, why? And then they're like, because we see how much you struggle, you as in teachers. I see how much you teachers struggle, and I don't want to do that. Those were my students that were 16, 17, 18 years of age, and they were seeing what was happening. So a little bit of information and data about the status of teachers around the world. And this is connected to teacher attrition. And I'm bringing you data from 3 different countries that I'm working with right now, okay? In the US, you can see here, since the start of the school year, my district and or school has struggled to hire a sufficient number of, look at number 4, full-time teachers, 48%, almost half of the teachers. In many school counties, they have okay capacity for teachers, but many school counties around the US, they're struggling. They're really struggling to find full-time teachers. Many of them, and I don't know if this is the reality in some of you might be in Germany, in other countries, but in many parts of the US right now for K through 12, you do not even have to have teacher certification. If you have a bachelor's degree in anything, they're hiring you to go into the classroom and teach anything. And that's happening. This is real life because of the issues, the challenges that they have with teacher retention, and they cannot find enough teachers in the US. In Turkey, only 26% of teachers feel that the profession is valued by society. That's quite low. Like as teachers, we're passionate about what we do. We have a calling for, and a vocation, right? We feel that this is a calling. We want to improve someone's life. We want to spread knowledge on the topic we're very passionate about. But then only 26%, feel that they're valued. That affects us emotionally, right? Also, curriculum overload, technological issues, student disengagement. By the way, I keep seeing and hearing and talking to teachers more and more that student motivation seems to be at an all-time low. Are you all experiencing the same thing? Lack of motivation or demotivation from your students, that is very hard to engage them, that is very hard to connect with them? Oh, thank you, Caroline. Christian, thank you. Christian, I hope I don't know if it's Christian or Christian. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Felicitas, definitely. Yes. Absolutely. Not all of them, obviously, but more than in the past. Yes. Yeah, that's an issue now that we're seeing more and more. Of course, that affects us as teachers as well, right? Because then we have this idea of, are we doing something wrong? Am I not doing what I'm supposed to be doing to help my students? And then, because we have this, we teachers, we tend to have this thing that we blame ourselves, right? But there are many, many more realities that we're competing with as teachers nowadays that it didn't happen before, right? We're literally fighting with everything that exists, AI, technology, video games, this, that, for students' attention, right? And the span of attention, and we're seeing this, I'm going here on a tangent, I'm going to come back to well-being, but students' attention, we have research that is diminishing throughout the generations, right? Yes, in comparison with media. Yes, Lena, exactly. Yes, exactly. We are yes, Christian, exactly. And that's why we have to start thinking about our own teaching, right? So I rarely lecture anymore. I do more of conversations with students. Like if you walk into the classroom, for the fact that I'm much older than my students, because they're 18, 19, 20, you wouldn't know who's the teacher and who's the student. So I'm changing my teaching. We have to, because it's a different reality now, right? All right. So in Hungary, a lot of teachers, are fighting with depression, insomnia, internet technology, also burnout, overcommitment, depression. So these are some of the things that perhaps some of you may have experienced or are experiencing or you have heard about, okay? So again, we're not alone when it comes to teacher well-being. It's not that one country or two countries are struggling. It's a global trend. Some of the findings that I'm seeing from research, from the work that I'm doing with teachers, from conversations in the field, what are some of the major concerns for teachers? Salary and compensation. I mean, come on, we knew this was coming. Lack of respect and appreciation for many of us, this is the case. Work has intensified and now demands more flexibility, longer hours, more physical, emotional, and mental energy. Some days, and I don't know if this happens to all of you, and we're teachers, so I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but we know that our brains do not turn off. And I'm always thinking about tomorrow, for example. I'm teaching tomorrow, and I already have my classes ready for tomorrow, but I'm thinking, is there a better activity for me to introduce this? And, our brains do not stop. Also, we have to grade papers, do this, do that, I mean, we know this. So, and at some point, and sometimes I ask myself, I wonder, Luis, how can you squeeze in a 25th hour in a 24-hour day, right? Because I need an extra hour or something, right? But it is true. Work has definitely intensified. I don't know if this is the case for all of you in your context. It was very much for me in the US. Physical safety was an issue and a challenge. And in the United States, I can tell you many, many stories, but of course, you know about school shootings as well, but that's not the only case. In the United States, we are seeing more and more, it's incredible, and not in a good way, student on teacher physical attack. So students attacking physically teachers, especially elementary school children. And we don't know why, but we know it's going up, right? So safety is a big problem. Trauma, I'm going to talk a little bit about trauma now. Okay, so there are many elements here because I'm looking at the time. I want to share with you a story because we're going to talk about advocacy in just a little bit, but let me read this to you. Listen to Elena's story, please. Elena is a dedicated English language teacher who goes above and beyond for her students. She spends her evenings finding free resources, advocates for better classroom materials, and fights for her learners' rise to a quality education. She stands up for her students when policies fail them and speaks out when her program is underfunded. Elena believes in her students and in the power of education to change lives. But as she advocates for others, she often works late, feels exhausted, and carries the weight of all of it alone. She fights for her students, she fights for her program, she fights for change. But who advocates for Elena? Who advocates for English language teachers? And many of us might feel represented with Elena, that sometimes, and this is how I felt certainly in the US, thankfully in Poland is much, much different. But in the US, many, many times it felt that I was the only one advocating for our English program that was always underfunded, that I was the only one fighting for our students' rights to get a quality education. And at times, fighting a little bit for myself too, right? Like I need more support, I need more. And more often than not, there was silence from the administrative team, from other teachers as well, right? Catherine, thank you for sharing that. This job requires being accessible around the clock from Monday to Sunday. Yes, yes, yes. I know it feels like it. Also, if you don't respond, I had a message recently. Today's Tuesday. Someone sent a message, I think on Friday or Saturday. No, you haven't responded. Well, you emailed me during the weekend. It's Tuesday today, so give me at least 48 hours, right? So yes, it does feel like it. Okay, so we're going to talk about advocacy now. So what we can do, I've shared with you elements of well-being and what is affecting us. And I will be sharing now with you what we can do about it, because it's important to talk about the reality, what we're going through, and what affects our well-being. But we also have to talk about, only talking about that, it's important to acknowledge, but it's not going to change if we don't take action, right? So I'm going to talk about what we can do about it. But I'm going to share with you two jokes first, because I know it was a little bit heavy, but it was important information that we needed to talk about, okay? So let's go with the first one. And this is for my grammar people, some of us who love grammar, okay? Why did the comma break up with the apostrophe? Why did the comma break up with the apostrophe? This is teacher jokes. You're my audience, so of course we're teachers. Why? Comma, apostrophe. Any guesses? Okay, here we go. I'm thinking everyone is laughing out loud and cannot type, so I'm gonna go with that one, okay? Because the apostrophe was too possessive. I thought that was genius, the comma with the apostrophe. The apostrophe was too possessive. Get it? The thing on top. These are teacher jokes, okay? Teacher jokes. Okay. Oh, thank you. All right. Why did the language teacher wear sunglasses at school? Why? Why did the language teacher wear sunglasses at school? Let's see. We have some people typing. Yes, Andrea, yes, because the students were so bright. Yes. Well done, Carol, too. Yes, excellent. Well done. Humor is always fantastic, I think, for us, but also for the classroom. And this is one way we're talking about student engagement that I try to bring my students. Of course, you have to know yourself, your teaching style, what works for you. But I bring a lot of humor into my classroom. I teach English and Spanish, and I love teaching lower levels. That's what I love the most. And then in Spanish, we have just a quick another joke here, and then we're going to go into advocacy. I am, we say in Spanish, soy, but soy in English means soy, like soy milk, right? And then there is this joke that I bring to Spanish 101. What if soy milk is just milk, say, introducing itself in Spanish, right? Like, I am milk, soy milk, The students laugh out loud. It's a good way also to remember the conjugation of I am, which is soy, right? And they love it. I don't know if they love at me or with me, but we're having fun, right? So humor is important. So yes, absolutely. Thank you. Yes. So please bring humor, jokes into the classroom. It works very well. It's good also for well-being. All right. So Luis, what can be done? You talked about the issues, the challenges, and I'm going to go through these three examples, but I do want to give us some time also because I want to hear from you. I want to chat with you as well, okay? Yes, Carol, thank you so much for that. Yes. So I'll give you three examples, okay? The first one, what can be done to improve our well-being? Well, advocacy, which means speaking up and speaking out, right? So talking to other people, connecting with other people, saying, you know what, we're teachers, we have to come together and help each other. Okay, so the first thing that we have to consider in advocacy and advocating for ourselves is to first evaluate, assess the safety and appropriateness of advocacy activities within your specific context. A little bit kind of long, but what does that mean? Make sure that in your context, you're able to advocate for yourself. In some places, in some contexts that I've worked with, I'll give you an example without naming any country names, but I'm working with teachers in a specific context where they're not allowed to form groups. So they cannot have communities, they cannot come together. Associations, that's not allowed in that context, right? So it's not safe for them to come together as a group and advocate for their well-being, right? In some contexts, you might be able to come together, talk about the challenges that you're facing as a community in your classroom, in your schools, and say, okay, so these are the issues that we're going through, that we're experiencing, and then you can escalate it to your administrative team, right? So some questions that you can consider here: can I even use the word advocacy, however we translate it in our contexts? Can you use it? In some contexts, no. What are potential risks or benefits of saying, you know what, we're teachers, we're burned out, we need support, right? But when you do that, again, it's always stronger and better if you come together as a group. One voice is good, but a community is always stronger, okay? Also, if you have organizations in your area, in your context, what spaces do you have to come together and talk about it, like we're doing right now, for example, right? So community organizations or institutions that provide space where we can talk about, these are the challenges that we're experiencing, and we need to think about the channels that we can use, the things that we can do in our context, because it's not going to be the same for everyone, of course. The second point that I want to share with you: educate yourself and others about rights and resources. And I bring you an example here. This is one of the teachers that I'm working with in Nigeria. And he says, Hamisu, he says, I advocate because the safety, well-being, and success of language teachers are linked to Nigeria's linguistic and educational progress. And he's talking about, this is very, very much the type of advocacy that I was mentioning earlier. He started seeing how teachers in his community were experiencing a lot of challenges with well-being, whether it was safety, conditions, etc. So he started connecting with teachers. He started offering workshops. He started coming together with teachers in his community. He started offering professional development opportunities for teachers, talking about the challenges that they were experiencing together, individually and together as a community. And then now what he's doing, because he already built a community of teachers in his context, that they all are experiencing well-being issues at different levels. Now he's using that platform, that community that he has created, and now he's talking to educational local authorities. And he's saying, look, we have this group of teachers, we're coming together, we're doing professional development workshops, we're talking about, we're running workshops and a series of webinars, and we're seeking support because, we're doing self-education here, but we need support to be better, to deal with stress, with, overwork, with low salary, with this, with that, so different challenges that they're going through. The third, and this is very, very important that we don't talk enough about it, which is to document. Document, and that's why I started with a story. Document and share stories, okay? Success stories, stories of challenges, stories, teacher stories, and I cannot emphasize enough the importance of teachers sharing their stories. Not what researchers collect and then they interpret and they share, nothing against researchers. Teachers are first person voice, like this is what I am experiencing. I bring you an example from Cameroon, and she goes by the name of Abigail, which is her last name, and she's doing fantastic work as well. And what she's doing is that she realized and she identified that in her context, especially female language teachers, were experiencing gender-based discrimination, unequal pay, and limited access to leadership roles. And that was in Cameroon. She's an English and French teacher. So she started very, very similar to Hamisu. She started establishing a community of practice, a group, right? So there's a community of practice coming together, a group. But for her, it was 350 women. That was fantastic. Then, and she's still doing this. She's very active doing this. She's giving professional development workshops to female teachers, mentoring connections. Mentoring is very important. And now she's starting public awareness campaigns in her context. She's talking about, and this is the importance of historicizing or making a historic, making your stories a history, if you will, historic record, right? So she's making publicly, campaigns, public campaigns, or publicizing her the struggles of female language teachers, and when it comes to, of course, this affects well-being, but gender pay, unequal pay because of gender-based discrimination, limited access to to leadership roles and things like this, right? So this is something that I think is fantastic as well. Hamisu and Abigail are doing fantastic work, and these are just two of the teachers that I have the pleasure of knowing and working with. When we think of advocacy, I really like this, and I'm paraphrasing from a TV show, but I really, really like to think that if you can advocate for yourself, how in the world are you going to advocate for somebody else? Of course, we're teachers. Of course, we're there to advocate and protect our students. But if we cannot do that with ourselves first, if we are not 100%, or at least as possibly, in the best condition that we can, to teach our students, to deal with the daily challenges that come with teaching, and we know what those are, right? They come unannounced. Just to be the best that we can in the classroom, if we're not at full capacity, we're not going to be the best that we can for our students as well. So I think that self-advocacy should be number one, so we can do the best for our students as well. And I'm going to, I have a couple more slides, but I want to read this. And if you were in the previous, we had a few months back a conversation about social emotional learning, and you may have seen this. I love bringing it because I truly believe in this. In the process of education, teachers and students are like the infinity sign, always connected, always interacting, always supporting and dependent on one another. The symbiosis between educators and learners is a dynamic that nourishes the intellectual and emotional growth of both. A healthy and successful educational ecosystem thrives on the mutual well-being of teachers and students. I really, really think that teachers and students are like the infinity sign. We are 50-50. If one of us is not doing well, the other one can only do so much. I'm gonna perhaps hear food for thought, something that maybe for the future. And this is for a book is coming up. I think it's coming out in March next year. Trauma-sensitive practices in English language teaching. Something that we're seeing more and more is an increase of secondhand trauma with that teachers are experiencing. Teachers, a lot of our students are arriving in the classroom with trauma. Those are the topics that we're seeing more and more from research, from conversations with my colleagues. And when students share that with us, we experience it through secondhand trauma. That also affects our well-being. So I just want you to be aware of that. We don't have, that could be a whole presentation by itself, trauma and secondhand trauma for teachers, but that affects our well-being. So please be aware of secondhand trauma. I did not know about it when I was working with my students, and that affected me very, very much. I didn't realize that I was experiencing secondhand trauma through my students when I was in the US. So I just wanted to share that with you so you can be aware of it, and perhaps you can look it up or read about it if you think that is something that might be affecting your well-being as well. All right, and then at this point, I know we only have about 10 minutes or so perhaps we can go into, before, we're gonna come back to this, but my students, they said that Facebook is for old people, so they told me that I needed to create an Instagram. So if you're on Instagram, please follow me, because my students made me create one so I can be, hip with them. I don't even know if they say hip anymore, but that's what we used to say. Anyway, so please follow me, and this is also my email, my website. So this is how you can connect with me. But perhaps now, Bridget, we can open up, and we can, if you don't have any comments or questions, we can also reflect on these two questions. But I would love to open up the space here for you to ask any questions, share any comments. We have time. I would love to hear from you.